Hello and welcome to A Review to a Kill, the James Bond retrospective podcast where we rewatch every Bond from Connery to Craig to review and rank each one. I'm your host, Special Agent Sedgwick, and returning for this debrief is an agent that would have seen through Elektra immediately.
Carter. Chris Carter. And yeah, you don't need X-ray specs to see through that bitch.
Today, we are reviewing Die Another Day, the 20th Bond outing from Eon Productions, the first film of the new millennium, and an original story that takes influence from Fleming's novels Moonraker and The Man with the Golden Gun, as well as Kingsley Amis's novel Colonel's Son. The film premiered at the Royal Albert Hall in London, which was transformed into an ice palace on the 18th of November, 2002. Reception was mixed again. It was savaged for idea recycling, miscasting, bad CGI, cartoonish gadgets, and the 40-year-old repetitive formula. Brosnan, while at his most comfortable in the role, was noted again for his aging. Retrospective reviews have not improved, and this film ranks at or near the bottom of most lists. The crazy thing is that this formula is kind of what the franchise needs now that it's been 20 years since we've seen it.
You think so?
It would actually be reinvigorating and nostalgic.
I don't necessarily agree with you. I like the direction the franchise has gone in the last few movies.
I watched hours of behind-the-scenes footage and interviews for this film, and I get the sense that Babs is the one more like Cubby. She came up with the ideas again, this time the Ice Palace. She's the creative force, while Mike seems to be stuck in 10 years ago, as if when he had to start worrying about logistics, he had no more time for creative efforts, and is satisfied just going through the formula and checking the boxes, giving the people what he thinks they want, even if it's killing the franchise.
Murdered the franchise is what it did.
Made for $142 million, it made $431.9 million in the box office. But make no mistake, the film made money, but critical reception and word of mouth was getting worse for each film, and this fortune was very likely about to start tanking in the other direction once pushed too far, a la Marvel Phase 4.
A la Marvel Phase 4. You can't just shovel out crap.
We'll only keep buying you for your name so long.
Right.
Produced by Babs Brock and Mike Wilson, Pierce Brosnan returning. I also want to say that I accidentally deleted some things from the last episode, talking about when Bond took Q's boat in the opening sequence and launched 70 feet down and out of the building, crunching his spine. But also, when he dives from the boat for the balloon, the top of the boat disappears. I don't know how it got deleted or how I didn't catch it in time, and I'm very sorry about that. It's never happened before, it won't happen again.
There you have it.
In Bond news this month, they're going to auction off Roger Moore's Bond collection in honor of his 50th anniversary of becoming Bond.
Right on.
It's been reported, but unconfirmed, that Christopher Nolan was about to sign on to direct the next installment of the Bond series when the writer's strikes happened.
Really?
The dots roll out, and the first blast of the Bond theme are bombastic. They're epic. And then it hard turns into Techno Lane, and a CGI bullet fires at the screen. All the plates are again the same, as I said they would be throughout Brosnan's entire run. But think about that bullet. The camera's perspective is through the barrel of an op's gun. So James just perfectly fired a bullet down this guy's barrel. So we're starting right off with the bullshit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The bullet is the only difference. And I didn't like it. It was cartoony.
Oh, that was stupid.
Yeah.
The dot reveals a military compound on the Pukchang coast in North Korea, before focusing on the giant waves outside it. The opening surfing scene features some of the biggest waves in the world at Pihai Beach, appropriately enough called Jaws, on Maui, Hawaii.
I have actually been to that beach, and those waves are literally that big.
Bond comes ashore, however, at Holywell Bay in Cornwall. North Korea here is mostly the backlot at Pinewood, though airborne scenes were filmed at an army base in Hampshire. We see a surfer riding the waves in a camo wetsuit. Another pops out of the surf, and then another. These three are ripping one of the tallest waves ever, and for a record amount of time while barely controlling themselves enough not to wipe each other out, which actually happened a lot during filming as they don't usually ride so close and had their vision restricted by fake night vision goggles.
Poor bastards. Those surfers are probably the best stuntmen in this whole film.
The music is super exciting, and the waves are huge, but something about the impressive nature of this stunt doesn't translate well to the screen, and the music feels like it's outdoing the scene. Like a wrestling promoter fluffing a match the crowd just isn't behind.
You know what else this scene calls to mind when I was watching it? It's called the Batman paradox. Like, I'm thinking to myself, James Bond is a well-skilled, super secret agent. How did he have time to learn how to do all of this shit in his short life? It takes 10,000 hours to become professional at something, and he's a professional at everything.
He's had 30 years at Cambridge.
I guess he started Cambridge when he was 10.
Yeah. He was an orphan. They just stuck him in there and said, God save the Queen, son, and slammed the door. The waters in Cornwall are not 50 foot tall, so they composite the beach entry insert. The three agents run inland, and one starts disabling a small radar beacon. Bond pops a hatch on his surfboard and kits out with C4 and other weaponry. He stabs a knife into the ground that sends a false beacon, and we cut to a Mil Mi-8T, flying low and turning to the new beacon. The chopper lands, and a man named Van Bierk, played by Mark Diamond, and I'm not making that up, by the way,
No.
gets out before Bond and co. take them hostage. Bond's two South Korean allies have donned North Korean uniforms as well. Bond is wearing the exact outfit as Van Bierk, to the point of ridiculousness. He takes the man's case and shades, then takes the man's place when they steal the chopper and fly off. Inside the case are a ton of diamonds. Underneath them, Bond plants C4 with a detonator connected to his watch. They land at Colonel Tan Sun Moon's headquarters. It's in the demilitarized zone of Korea, 'cause fuck international treaties.
Because fuck international treaties.
That's not how that works, right?
That's definitely not how that works. It's one of the most fucking patrolled and observed zones in all of the world. And you can't hide shit there. Any military buildup, like a fort you could see from space, would be provocative to say the least.
We cut to Colonel Moon, going Jet Li on a punching bag. He's played by William Lee, and when he's done, they open the bag to reveal he was beating his anger therapist for doing his job. Rick Yoon immortalizes Zhao, the hench who scans Bond from afar when Bond exits the plane. Moon then comes out to greet Bond as Van Bierk. We learn Moon went to Oxford and Harvard, but hates the West, even though he has like 10 European supercars.
One of them's American.
Van Bierk has the diamonds, so Moon brings out the weapons he's trading for. Hovercraft. The sell being they'll float over landmines. Zhao and an expert take the diamonds to verify their authenticity, and Bond says, don't blow it all at once.
It's almost a dead giveaway.
It's almost tell it on yourself, actually, yeah. It's kind of a stupid thing to say.
Right? Especially in a high-risk arms deal. I would be like, check that case.
Just then, Zhao gets the info back on Bond and knows who he is now. Shameless Sony Ericsson collab plug.
This is back when they were almost trying to dominate the world.
Zhao tells Moon about Bond, and Moon grabs his new tank buster before blowing up Bond's helicopter with it. Bond is detained, but Moon gets a call from his daddy saying he's 5 minutes out, sees the hella smoke, and Moon's gonna get a spanking.
Basically.
Moon orders the weapons cleared at once. They line up a firing squad to execute Bond, but he hits his watch, and the case explodes, sending diamonds flying into the soldiers and Zhao. Bond breaks for it. Zhao has expensive acne now, and the supercars get shot as Bond runs to a hovercraft. The cars get blown up as chaos ensues. Bond knocks out one of the hover goons and takes the other's gun to mow down soldiers. He fires missiles from the craft and destroys the entire base.
Of course. That's what he does. He destroys bases.
If there's a facility in a Bond movie, it's probably going to blow up. Probably randomly.
Pretty much every building he's in, except for the hotels.
Yeah, it did.
Which hotel?
When he was like, your room or mine, it was Never Say Never Again. Even MI6 is blown up.
Couple times.
Bond fires at the control panel for the concrete gate, and it drops behind him, blowing up a pursuing craft. He ditches the driver and takes over to chase down Colonel Moon. Moon fires his tank buster, but sucks at aiming. Bond knocks another craft into an old tank, and the craft flips before cartwheeling through the air and exploding.
Do these guys count for the kill count?
They're dead, right?
Well, yeah, they're definitely dead.
Moon also can't hit Bond with a 50 cal from 20 feet away. Bond fires at the mines on the ground behind him to blind his pursuing craft, and they crash into a tree before exploding. Moon is now behind Bond somehow, and just kind of pushes Bond's craft around instead of shooting him. So Bond kills Moon's driver and comes aboard. Moon and Bond fight on the hovercraft with no one driving, and it just follows the path between the trees just fine.
Just fine. It's almost as if someone were driving it.
Moon kicks Bond a lot, and Bond punches Moon into the flamethrower, which Moon shoots at Bond from 6 feet away, and misses as Bond dives away.
I don't know if you've ever been around a hovercraft. They're a lot louder.
Bond sneaks to the cab and floors the throttle. Moon is sucked into the fan intake and pinned as Bond dives for a hanging bell and the craft goes over a cliff. Bond drops and says, "Saved by the bell." He's then met by Moon's daddy, General Moon, played by Kenneth Sang, and he's not happy. They take Bond back to a base, and we cut to soldiers dragging Bond to a tub of ice water and forcing him under. They continue ice bath waterboarding him until CGI ice girls flip around the water, and we hear the moaning strings start Madonna's effort for this film.
This movie was poorly done all the way around, from special effects to stunts to just about everything. I don't know, there's a few saving graces. I guess, like you said, it is kind of fun.
The concept of the title sequence is to represent Bond trying to survive 14 months of torture at the hands of the North Koreans. This title sequence actually serves as part of the film as we continue on with his story, even during the song. We still get the visual titles, but they dance in and out with Bond's torture. Scorpions, sunfire, ice, and nude CG silhouettes of women are the ticket of the day, all filtered by an iridescence more meant to invoke diamonds than oil this time.
I kind of dug the expository visual aspect of the title credits. Yes, it's kind of cool that they continue the movie. Seems like they filmed a lot for this movie, then they had to cut it, and they wanted to put it on the screen anyway, so they were like, well, let's just put it right here in the title, because the opening was going to be longer than the last one.
Assistant Director Jerry Gavigan, Unit Manager Iris Rose, Production Supervisor Janine Motter, Supervising Art Director Simon Lamont. Additional units by Sean O'Dell, Don King, not the promoter, and the Woo in his last bit for the franchise. You will be missed.
Yep, he will be missed.
Model Effects Supervisor John Richardson, Visual Effects Supervisor Mara Bryan. Blame her for the CGI.
Okay, I will. And I'm going to give a shout out to the model director because he did a fairly decent job.
He's getting better, I'll say that. Main titles by Danny Kleinman, again. This is the best of his efforts. Special Effects Supervisor Chris Corbold. Second Unit Director Vic Armstrong, who we can all admit has been a worthy successor to the Woo.
Oh, yeah.
Edited by Christian Wagner.
He seems new.
Director of Photography David Tattersall. Production Designer Peter Lamont. This guy is still kicking.
He's still doing a decent job, too.
David Arnold back on music. Die Another Day by Madonna. Critics' opinions of this song were sharply divided. It was nominated for a Golden Globe and a Grammy, but was also nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Original Song of 2002. See what I mean about polarizing? While Madonna herself won the Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actress for her cameo in this film. Maybe you like this song. It sucks though. Worst Bond song literally of all time. Sigmund Freud analyzed this. Shut the fuck up, crazy lady.
I feel like Madonna didn't understand the assignment when they gave it to her.
God, no.
She had some homework, and she didn't understand the question.
It feels like she just gave him the next single she was going to release.
Had nothing to do with James. The lyrics had nothing to do with the movie. It had none of the constructive points of a James Bond song, none of the hits.
It's not built on any of the notes of the Bond theme in any way. So it's not a Bond song. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's just not.
It's not. It is probably, hands down, the worst James Bond song I've ever heard.
Co-producer Callum McDougall. Executive producer Anthony Way. Written by a returning Purvis and Wade, again from ideas pitched by Babs Broccoli. Produced by Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli. Cut to the movie before showing the director. They asked Michael Apted to return, but rescinded the offer in order to ask Tony Scott and John Woo, who both declined.
They must have read the script.
Pierce Brosnan suggested John McTiernan, Ang Lee, and Martin Scorsese as potential choices, and informally discussed the idea of directing a Bond film with Scorsese on a flight before Lee Tamahori was hired. The guy who made XXX2 with Ice Cube. Woohoo!
Yeah. Weird.
When the credits prematurely end, we see a Korean guard looking in on Bond, who's now long-haired and bearded. He's dirty and his clothes in tatters. It's been 14 months, and goons come in to take him to General Moon. Moon says his silence, after being abandoned, was only stubborn, but it doesn't matter anymore. Things are out of his hands. More soldiers cart Bond away, and we cut to a military convoy pulling up to a border village. They force Bond onto a bridge from Silent Hill and line up rifles drawn. The general says they've reached the end, and implies Bond is the reason North Korea will absolutely never trust the West now.
Sure, one American agent
British.
fucked it all up.
He curses Bond for his son's death and demands to know who his son's Western ally was, who Bond says was probably the same person that betrayed him.
That's a pretty good assumption, I would have to say.
Honestly, if he didn't think that, I would call him dumb.
Right.
Moon then orders Bond to walk forward into the fog. Bond thinks he's to be executed and steels himself as he walks forward before passing Zhao on the bridge and finding M and allies on the other side. It's a prisoner exchange. Did you notice how Zhao was clean and groomed and unharmed when he passed the beaten hobo Bond?
Oh, yeah.
That's propaganda. The West perfected water torture, baby.
Zhao would not have been in that good of shape.
We would have fucked him up too.
That dude would have been emaciated, shell-shocked.
Oh, over in North Korea, they waterboard you. Meanwhile, America's hiding their rags in bottles.
Oh, Jesus. The other thing I thought about this scene is how many times has Bond been in almost an identical situation and decided, I'm just going to run for it, or I'm just going to jump off this bridge, or something like that.
How many times has he been in a situation where he literally should have thought nothing but he was seconds away from death and still just was like, I'm cool, I'm going to find a way out any second now?
Right, yeah. It seemed odd that he had given up.
Michael Madsen's character, NSA handler Damien Falco, is unimpressed and takes the piss out of Bond. They drug Bond, and we cut to him undergoing medical scans, then fade to black for a time jump. M comes to see Bond in his medroom. They've washed and touched his hair with some Just for Men, apparently. Trimmed his beard nicely as well. M wishes she didn't have to trade for Bond, and left him there because she has a hard line on dealing with terrorists and learned nothing from the last movie.
No, learned nothing from the last movie.
I thought that was the lesson she was supposed to learn from the last movie, was maybe not be so hardline with things like this. Or it might fuck you.
M's gonna M.
Turns out the Americans think Bond was squealing, and it got one of their agents killed. Bond is offended by all of this. Also, neither seem to understand that the man who saved the world 19 times is far more important than a one-movie henchman, no matter how bedazzled.
He is kind of bedazzled now. Why would they leave them in his face?
Because they want you to be like they're embedded too much to remove, but that's absolute horse shit.
That is horse shit. They're in his face. They're not in his skull.
And even then, they'd still probably try. You could probably do it with some tweezers.
You could probably do it with tweezers.
Bond stressed he was betrayed by Moon's partner in the West that made him to Zhao. M revokes his 00 status because it's been a few movies since Rogue Bond. She also intends to keep him captive and tells Bond he's no use to anyone now. And come on, that's not fair. He's getting flabby and starting to look like my stepdad, but honestly, that's amazing shape for rotting in a North Korean prison camp for over a year. The scorpion stings were like juicing.
Yeah, right? It looks like he worked out every day. Scorpion stings and then, Pilates.
The scorpion stings and Pilates. Get the fuck out of here.
The typical hippie experience.
M leaves, and Bond stops his heart by thought and flashbacks. It's the stupidest fucking shit in the world, and when they go to defib, his heart rate starts back up, and he puts a paddle to each of them and shocks the doctors, even though the circuit isn't complete. And I'm here to tell you that none of that works like that.
Unless those two doctors were holding hands.
Maybe the floor had an inch of water.
Well, when did he have time to study in a Buddhist monastery to stop?
How do you learn how to stop your heart through the power of flashbacks?
Well, I'm just saying, you could probably slow your heart rate down through breathing techniques and stuff. They do this in Buddhist monasteries, but this usually takes these dudes a lifetime to master.
And you're not going to flatline for 30 seconds either.
Yeah, and you're not going to flatline at all. Your heart will still continue to beat, although it'll be at a rate where it may be imperceptible to non-medical equipment. But this dude was hooked up to fucking EKG. When did Bond become,
30 years at Cambridge.
30 years at Cambridge?
Bond casually sneaks off the ship and swims like a mile through the bay to pull himself up in front of the yacht club at Hong Kong. Bond enters a hotel, dripping wet, looking homeless, and with his shirt wide open. But somehow, the manager Chang, played by Ho Yi, recognizes him and orders the presidential suite.
Now, if this were real life, they would call the police and have this bum drug out of their hotel lobby. I don't care how posh your accent is.
That's the passport. It's his posh accent. Bond orders a tailor, some food, and Bollinger. The music finally ditches the techno again, and it finally fits the scene. Bond's cleaned and fitted, looking like Mr. Fantastic with that touch of gray.
I say, where'd that come from? It wasn't in his long hair.
I know, right? At the door, he greets Peaceful Fountains of Desire, a masseuse played by Rachel Grant. He grabs her gun from her garter and tosses an ashtray through a mirror to reveal Chang on the other side with a camera and cronies. Chang is Chinese intelligence, and Bond has always known. Now, in the early drafts of this script, it was Wei Lin who aided Bond in Hong Kong here, but the idea fell through, and Chang was created to replace her.
It would have been better with Wei Lin. I'm doing it in my head mentally, and yes, it would have been better with Wei Lin.
Callback would have been nice, at least.
Then I could have had a little fight, right there in the bedroom.
Bond asks Chang to get him into North Korea to get after Zhao. Chang gets Bond tickets to Cuba and a spy care package. Chang says Zhao lost himself in Havana, and when Bond finds Zhao, to give him a goodbye from the Chinese agents that he's killed.
Good old revenge plot. Nothing like Rogue Bond.
We then cut to Havana, actually shot in Spain. The establishing shot has a couple eating each other's faces before panning over to Bond walking the streets. Bond enters a cigar-rolling factory and asks for delictados as a code phrase. The cigars in No Time to Die will have this name on their bands.
Really?
It's a callback to this.
Huh, that's awesome.
Bond is taken to Raoul, played by Emilio Echeverria, a sleeper agent running the factory. Raoul calls in some favors and finds out that Zhao is convalescing in a black market surgery clinic on an island called Organ Island.
I noticed that too.
The site has been doing insane research into prolonging the lives of the rich, and the writers are fucking lazy.
The Island of Organs. Oh my god. You're right.
Raoul gives Bond a revolver, a book on ornithology, which is great, and binoculars. Bond could also use a fast car. So that book is the exact same book that Fleming looked at on his coffee table and got the name for his protagonist. If you pause it, you'll see that the author is scratched out on the book that he's holding up.
Yeah.
Because the author of that exact book was named James Bond.
James Bond.
And we weren't ready for that kind of universe breaking yet. As for the car, he gives Bond one older than this franchise. A 1957 Ford Fairlane 500 Skyliner. It's very Cuba.
This car made it just feel so much like Cuba. I love Cuba.
Arnold's song, Welcome to Cuba, blasts as James drives to the Grand Palacio Hotel. At the beach lounge, Bond smokes a cigar and starts bird watching, checking out some amazing rare species, such as Organ Island, a castle, and Halle Berry doing her best Ursula Andress impersonation, complete with homage bikini and dive belt.
Pretty hot, I gotta say.
If Halle Berry looks like she's about to scream, "Oh my god, it's freezing," when she pops up in slow-mo, it's 'cause she is. It was freezing in Spain, and they got this shot in between storms. Berry protested in favor of a pinewood insert, but was kinda guilted into it, honestly.
Yeah, they kind of manipulated that poor girl.
This is NSA agent Giacinta Jinx Johnson. Madsen's Falco is her direct handler. They were going to give her a spin-off series with the director chosen, and Barry signed on with Madsen returning. But it just withered into disinterest as the time of pre-production went on and on. But it made it further than the Wei Lin spin-off. Also, Selma Hayek was initially considered for Jinx.
Would have been a different movie.
For the 6 minutes of screen time for Jinx.
Eh.
Bond sips a mojito, and after perving on Jinx with binoculars, says, "Magnificent view." This is unprovoked, by the way. She's not even looking at him. Creep.
Yeah, right? Just got out of jail, I gotta bang something. He says that later.
The conversation that follows between them is so odd and inhuman that it feels like the longest code phrase back and forth between spies ever. But really, it's just horrible dialogue.
Is this James Bond's game? Because it's terrible.
She gives a hammy 2-line backstory, and he quips about predators. He says, "You have to try the mojito. Is it too strong for you?" And she says, "I could learn to like it if I had the time." What are you saying?
Right? Was that flirty banter? Because I didn't get it.
If you had the time for what? A mojito? Just keep drinking them, bitch.
You'll learn to like them.
I swear to God, it might only take 2 or 3, depending on your tolerance. You're kind of tiny.
You right?
Bond says he's an ornithologist, and again, I kind of love the meta full circleness of that. They talk about owls and quip about predators feasting when the sun goes down, and we slowly crossfade to them getting it on as the orchestra picks up. That scene was one of the worst, most awkward instances of human encounter that I've ever witnessed put to celluloid. And now, with none of it earned, we just cut to these two banging.
It's like, they're both kind of sluts. I think that's what they were trying to imply, that Jinx is just as much a player as Bond. But it didn't come across that way?
No, it just came off like they were just like, oh, I don't know what else to do in the script, so let's get the sex scene in.
Yeah, that's how it felt. You're not wrong, Matthew. That's exactly how it felt.
It felt like the editor spilt coffee on an entire sequence or two.
Right?
She's a hyper-energetic and slightly aggressive lover, compared to most girls Bond beds. I must say, Barry is the first girl ever in the series that actually makes it look like they're having sex, and not just laying there or rolling around kissing. This is passionate, and it looks like the best lay he's had since Mayday. The contrast between this scene and the last is fucking insane.
Right?
It's like you can't talk like human beings, but y'all can fuck better than anybody else in the series.
Yeah.
Well, at least you got that down.
Yeah.
She asks if he's always this frisky, and Bond admits it's been a while. So then she laughs and pulls out a knife. Oh, snap. But she just cuts some fruit, and while chewing it, dives back onto him, feeding him like a bird as they get at it again. Ew.
That was a passion fruit. It's supposed to be passionate.
Don't snowball your fruit onto me, lady.
I like how he immediately took control of the knife, though, before anything else happened, if you notice.
In the morning, he wakes and she's gone. If Connery had 14 months of banging to make up for in one night, she wouldn't have been able to walk the next morning.
Oh, that's funny.
Bond looks out the window to see Jinx getting on a water shuttle for Oregon Island. Bond knocks on the door to another room of the hotel. The man who opens is a guy who was at the lounge the day before being a proper dick. Bond punches him out, steals his ticket info, and wheels the man in a wheelchair to the shuttle, gaining transport. Cutting to Isla Los Organos, we see Bond wheel the prick inside before shoving his wheelchair into a wall to have staff run to assist the man. Bond uses the distraction to sneak into a guarded area. To do this, though, Bond walks through a patient's window and trusts the guy won't yell, "Hey, there's a white man in here."
I'm baffled how they didn't see him push that dude's wheelchair. I mean, I know he kind of ducks in the doorway and does it, but still, I'd be like, hey, you, stop.
Bond also disables the security camera by unplugging it, hoping no one will notice and send someone to check it out. He then immediately knows there's a hidden door, where it is, and activates it in a second. Inside, he finds a carnival funhouse with some high school science props thrown in. Lots of spinning mirrors and double helixes.
He did walk up there and was like, why is that camera pointed at the wall? It must be a door.
Yeah, no one would ever just have a security camera in a hallway. This world is dystopian. The sight of a random camera just makes me think I'm being watched. We cut to Simon Andrew, who plays Walter Matthau's Cuban cousin here, Dr. Alvarez. He's giving a consultation to Jinx about their process of removing bone marrow and stripping original DNA blueprints before adding new DNA and changing people completely. Not just Michael Jacksoning their skin and dyeing their hair. No, this is the most ridiculous shit. And we've heard some stupid shit before, but I don't even know where to start debunking this. There's so much to unpack. This is Saturday morning cartoon level stupid. The only thing this doctor would achieve is horrifically murdering people. So Jinx shoots his ass.
I was just going to say what he described was a stem cell transplant, but you don't quite do it like that.
But he just described as a murder.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
She starts burning any of her patient info and then gets on the computer. We cut to Bond wandering the halls when he just happens to open a random door and find Zhao. He'd be good on game shows.
He would be.
Zhao is in a crazy contraption with a ton of lights and hoses, a mask, and auditory sleep training. He's halfway through being transformed into a white man that looks like a Chad. But for now, he's just bald, milk white, and glittery.
He's getting cosmetic surgery to alter his appearance here. Why haven't they pulled out the diamonds from his face?
He hasn't decided whether or not he wants to get rid of them. Bond stops the transformation and squeezes an IV bag, which somehow hurts Zhao. Zhao kicks Bond, and Bond hits him with a med pan. They roll around and hit each other. Zhao strangles Bond with his own hoses. Bond teleports from his knees to his feet in a bad edit so he can elbow Zhao and escape the choke. He rams Zhao's face into the light box, and then the frame rate drops to 12 frames a second in a terrible slow-mo. Someone tell the director he is not John Woo.
Oh my god, this whole movie, those bullet time pans were always in like the weirdest fucking part of a scene. It wasn't like it was an action part or something like that. It was people standing there. They're badly done.
They're just 3 frames a second slow-mo, not real bullet time because he's trying to fake it.
Right.
Bond grabs Zhao's necklace and punches Zhao, who grabs a gun. But Bond throws a bottle at the MRI, and it starts up and grabs the gun away. Pretty sure those are controlled by terminals in another room. And why is there an MRI crammed in this room with all these pans, scalpels, and other random metal objects? Hell, there was a revolver in there.
Again, that's not how that works. There is no metal objects in a room with an MRI.
A fire starts in this room too, because of course it does.
Of course it does. Do you see all the metal objects?
Bond hits the MRI's buttons again and grabs Zhao's gun. He fires at Zhao, but the man runs into the facility. Meanwhile, Jinx is setting a C4 charge to a cell phone detonator in the doctor's office. Sony Ericsson, of course.
Of course.
Jinx goes to leave and sees Bond, who just chases Zhao and shoots at the man before Zhao jumps out of a window. Bond chases him into the office when the C4 explodes and just blows Bond back like 5 feet. But his organs are liquid, rip.
Rip. Concussion is a thing.
If you are close enough to an explosion that it will launch your body 5 to 10 feet backwards, you're close enough to the explosion that your organs are gone.
And even if you don't die, we're talking traumatic brain injury, ruptured spleens, ruptured eardrums.
Your lungs are ruptured and you're literally choking on your own blood.
Fractures.
Bond sees the half-assed burn job on Jinx's files and the dead doctor. We then see Jinx egressing the facility and chasing Zhao. Zhao runs to a convenient MD-900 helicopter and jumps in. Bond smashes a tank nozzle and blows out a huge hole in foot-thick stone walls. Bullshit.
Like, what was that? Was the wall made of explosives? Because, like, the way that tank hit it and the way that wall exploded were two different kind of things.
It was a Hank Pym tank. When it hit the wall, it became like 10 times larger.
Something.
I like how Zhao just had a helicopter waiting for him to get attacked while sleeping in this place.
Yeah, I know.
Jinx chases the chopper, firing at it until it flies off over the sea. Soldiers come up behind her, and Bond walks up in time to see her disrobe and dive backwards off the cliff some 400 feet before swimming to a perfectly positioned and waiting Sunseeker Superhawk 48. Jinx also always has the perfect escape plan.
Apparently. I don't know if that dive is what I would call a perfect escape plan. You do it wrong, you're dead.
Well, the boat just happened to be right where she was going to jump.
Yeah, that could have been pre-planned.
Well, it's really fortuitous the soldiers happened to chase you there without getting turned off or led any other way or having to change the rendezvous spot. You're telling me her plan just went perfectly then?
Oh, super fortuitous.
She didn't even burn her photo. Her plan didn't go perfectly.
No, I know.
The soldiers ignore the gringo with a gun next to them and run off after a boat.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, he's standing right there with a gun.
Stupid.
Yeah, but what is this guy doing?
Inside Zhao's necklace were 4 diamonds that Raoul says were Sierra Leone conflict diamonds. Bond notices a micro-engraved logo, a pair of G's stylized in the shape of a diamond. Raoul, who Bond had taken them to, says, Gustav Graves. Graves found diamonds in Iceland a year ago, yet they're identical to conflict diamonds. What an amazing coincidence, Bond thinks. We cut to MI6 and Moneypenny eavesdropping before following Robinson in to M's office as she's told off by Falco for Bond's escape. Falco informs him of Bond's adventures in Cuba and tells her to put her house in order, or America will do it for them. I think this is the first time Americans were treated as semi-antagonists of powerful influence instead of bumbling yokels or even just equals.
I think you're right. Might be the first time.
It is not the last time we will be semi-antagonists.
Right.
Cutting aboard a British Airways Boeing 747, Bond is approached by an air hostess, played by Deborah Moore, Roger Moore's real-life daughter.
Oh, wow.
Bond reads High Life with Gustav Graves on the cover. Graves is played by Toby Stevens. Remember when Connery's Bond said you need earmuffs to listen to the Beatles in Goldfinger?
Yeah.
Well, now Bond arrives to London to the Clash's London Calling. Times have changed.
Times have changed.
We cut to Graves making a spectacular entrance by parachuting down in front of Buckingham Palace at the top of the mall. He then gives press interviews, West Wing style, as he walks to the palace to be knighted. We learn Graves is an adventurer, an adrenaline junkie. He's also working on some space project called Icarus, but it's not a secret. It's a surprise. So it's a secret.
What's the difference?
None.
Surprise! It's a secret.
Oh, also, apparently this guy never sleeps. He says only one shot at life, why waste it on sleep? 'Cause you'll die without it. Plenty of time to sleep when you're dead, I guess.
You will die.
We also meet the entrepreneur's publicist, Miranda Frost, played by Rosamund Pike. Even her name implies she's a frigid bitch.
Yeah. Yes, it does. You can't get more frigid than Frost.
Graves was modeled after Hugo Drax from Fleming's Moonraker novel, who was a Nazi war criminal that switched places with a British soldier at the end of World War II, became a well-respected and wealthy philanthropist, and used this cover to plan a nuclear missile strike on London. Graves was also modeled after Uday Hussein and Richard Branson.
Okay. Richard Branson, I get.
Something else about Graves is he fences, and Bond goes to the gentleman's club, Blades. This is mostly a set, but the central section of the fencing duel and the lobby are the Reform Club, seen in Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes, the 1998 big screen version of The Avengers, Not Those Avengers, and Quantum of Solace as the government office to which M is summoned to answer for 007's behavior.
Right on.
Inside, Bond finds the headmaster, Verity, played, unbelievably, by Madonna. She's a fine actress, believe it or not, I swear. She just doesn't look like a fencing instructor as much as a dominatrix.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, as much as a madam.
They slash and parry. She compliments the handling of his weapon, and he responds that he's been known to keep his tip up.
The only one-liner in this whole movie. That's not true, but it's the only one worth mentioning.
She exposits that Graves is fine and all, but his publicist, Frost, is the real master swordsman. Frost was Verity's protege and meddled in Sydney, but Bond points out she won by default. Verity also reveals that Graves only plays for cash, but no one wants to fight him anymore because he always wins. So of course Bond challenges him.
I mean, you didn't see where this was going when he walked in?
You knew they were going to fight and you know he's going to win. He's going to get his car, his money, his girl.
Yeah, he's going to do all of that.
That shit doesn't even change when Craig comes around.
Not really.
We get an insert of Graves side-eyeing Bond before they're properly introduced, and Graves asks Bond if they've met before. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do a villain reveal twist. It's not blind, as it's properly sprinkled. But unlike the last movie, they don't beat you over the head with every little detail making it super fucking obvious. Just enough to not be silly on a rewatch, as it should be.
Yeah, they did a much better job with the villain reveal here than they did in the last movie.
Bond says he would remember Graves if they'd met, and Graves smiles and proposes a game at 1,000 a point, and first to 3 hits. They ready and duel, with Graves scoring the first 2 hits, which he gloats about angrily. Toby Stevens is amazing. If you don't know what's up, he just seems overly competitive. which he is. But he's also angry because he knows Bond. We just don't know that yet. And he plays it to where it really works both ways. Again, a great way to sell a twist.
It is. It's a great way to sell a twist.
Almost everything he says and does to Bond and around Bond has a double meaning.
Oh yeah, much better done than the last film.
Bond suggests upping the wager to one of Graves' conflict diamonds he got in Cuba, enraging the man further. Bond isn't just an old foe anymore. He's a current obstacle again. Bond sharked the man, though, and when they reposition, Bond toys with him and cuts his wrist while disarming him. Frustrated, Graves rips his helmet and pads away and grabs swords from the wall, saying first to draw blood from the torso wins, and swings in a mad rage. They have a swashbuckling segment with tense spy music. It's kinda cool, but kinda odd.
It is kinda cool and kinda odd. I kept thinking to myself, nobody's gonna stop these two dudes from killing each other and causing thousands upon thousands of dollars of property damage in this fencing club. Not one person's gonna stop them.
You go stop him. Yeah, thought so.
Hey, if I was the owner of that fencing club, I would definitely stop them. I would be like, hey.
Yeah, from far away, you'd be like, hey.
Well, I'm not going to go jump in between two dudes swinging swords. That'd be stupid.
That's what I'm saying. Everyone's just getting out of their way and praying. Graves nicks Bond's leg, and Bond Graves' face. They have a good fight. It goes from room to room and destroys much of the place. They punch, spear, and kick. They slash and swing, and even trade up their weapons a few times, until they're just both heaving claymores.
It's a pretty epic fight.
At first, the extras are all like, oh, cool fight. But as it escalated, they get more and more panicked around these two. It's pretty good, and again, way better than the last movie's sins of not directing or controlling the background at all.
Right. I enjoy sword fights. They did a fairly decent swashbuckling job on this one.
Bond slashes Graves across the gut, and Graves falls into the fountain. Frost says that's enough, but Graves laughs heartily, saying, it's just a little sport, Miranda. Meanwhile, this gentleman's club just witnessed a two-man reenactment of the Battle of the Bastards. Graves offers his handshake and to settle up downstairs. When they do, Graves invites Bond to a little scientific demonstration of something called Icarus over the weekend in Iceland. And this is where Graves loses the whole game. He knows Bond is on him and should keep him away and give him nothing. Bond doesn't have any more leads after this, but instead, Graves literally invites Bond to come along and foil his plan because his desire to keep him close so Graves can kill him is stronger than his common sense.
Right?
He does not believe that Bond can stop him if he can kill him first. The Icarus tag is very fitting for this guy, and it's not too on the nose. Oh wait, he falls from his burning aircraft. Never mind, it is.
I was about to say.
Bond asks Frost if he'll have the pleasure of her company in Iceland, and she says he'll never have that pleasure. Because she's an ice queen, get it?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Oliver Skeet plays a concierge for the club that says someone left something for Bond and gives him a thick, old key. Bond walks to a security booth at the southern end of Westminster Bridge, where he finds the lock for his key. The entrance to the fictitious Vauxhall Cross tube station is constantly visited in real life by Bond fans banging on this door to see the fake station, just to piss off the actual workers there. In universe, though, Bond finds M at the bottom. He says he's heard of this place but never thought he'd see it. She replies some things are best kept underground, and that this is an abandoned station for clandestine meetings with abandoned agents. Bond wants to know what she wants from him after burning him.
Well, I would want to know that too.
Bond also points out that he wouldn't be here if she wasn't looking at Graves and asks her what she's got. She repeats the false bio we've heard before. Orphan in Argentina makes huge diamond find in Iceland and donates half to charity. Bond tells her it's a front for laundering conflict diamonds. M says Graves is politically connected, and Bond points out he's still on the outside, but then immediately says, shove that lady, give me my job back.
Immediately.
Even after pointing out how it's advantageous that he's not working for her.
I'm going anyway.
Hard cut to Vauxhall Cross and Bond cleaning his gun in his office. Hey, they gave him a new gun.
Yes, they updated the Walther in this one.
Glossing over the office we haven't seen since Lazenby, Bond hears suppressed gunfire and thuds. He loads his weapon and goes to investigate. He sees everyone in the office dead, including Moneypenny. As he moves, Bond is engaged by goons and takes them out. The cinematography is so epic here. It's not shaky, and there's no quick cuts. Instead, opting for unique angles and sweeping pans. The sets are stunning in this movie, and the crew is at the top of their game.
Yep, I'm not going to disagree with any of those statements. The sets are amazing.
As Bond moves to M's office, Robinson is shot in front of him and M held hostage. Bond dispatches the 3 goons, including shooting the hand of one goon held over M's heart. Hope those were Kevlar gloves for her sake.
It's the typical shoot the hostage.
Yeah, in an extremity, not the torso. She's dead. But as the goon falls backward, he slows and glitches out, and Q steps through him. Turns out this was all a VR simulation somehow. On a pair of Oakleys.
On a pair of Oakleys. No treadmill. How come he didn't walk into a fucking wall?
Was he just watching a video?
Yeah, not moving.
Q chides Bond's shot at the boss, and Bond bickers with Q. Bond calls the new Q Quartermaster for most of this movie, only calling him Q later on when a bond is formed. And it's kind of a nice touch.
It is a very nice touch. He doesn't like him.
What is a flaw, however, is that John Cleese is now playing Q completely different and more like Desmond would have in his early movies, when, as R, Cleese was just bumbling around and doing Diet Monty Python gags.
That is absolutely correct. That's one thing I did notice. I was like, gone is the old John Cleese, and in with the new John Cleese.
He's a completely different person now.
The actor John Cleese, not the Monty Python. Comedian John Cleese.
Exactly, comedian to actor.
Yep.
Gadgets and other props from every previous Bond film that were stored in Eon Productions archives appear in Q's warehouse in this scene. Also, Q mentions that the watch that he issues Bond is your 20th, I believe, a reference to Die Another Day being the 20th Eon Bond film. Brosnan even sniffs Rosa Kleb's shoe. But why though?
Right? Weird and gross. That was weird and gross. Why sniff the shoe?
Why is your first inclination to sniff the shoe? What an intrusive thought.
Right?
Q shows off a hypersonic ring that shatters bulletproof glass, along with the aforementioned watch. He also gives Bond his new ride. But when the platform comes out, there's nothing on it. It's a 2002 Aston Martin Vanquish they call the Vanish. It uses cameras and displays to make the car invisible. And while this is rooted in some real-life science, this is completely unbelievable.
Not only totally unbelievable, but why would you take such a pretty car and make it invisible? The Vanquish is probably the next best car to any of the DBs, and you don't see it the whole movie.
So it's projecting the floor from cameras underneath the car and just guessing what's underneath the wheels? Why is it so bright underneath the car? Wouldn't that be shaded? How many cameras does this use? Where are they? How do the imagers cover them up? How did they have better than 8K capture and display technology in 2002? It can generative fill and properly mirror adapt from cameras, but they can't figure out the near object convex issue as you see John Cleese warping behind him?
Oh, yeah. And the other thing is, how the fuck do you hide behind an invisible car?
I mean, they know you're there at that point. It's just for cover. It's kitted and fitted with all the classics as well, with an ejector seat, torpedoes, and target-seeking shotguns, which Bond uses to shoot through the manual in seconds.
Of course he does. He never reads the manual. He just pushes buttons and hopes for the best.
Don't we all?
What kind of super spy doesn't read the fucking manual?
All of us. That is an Agent Sedgwick thing to do right there.
Obviously, you've never hit the poison gas button by accident.
Just once. Cutting to M's office, we see her briefing with Frost, as she's apparently a secret agent for MI6. Frost volunteered for the Graves assignment, but in 3 months has turned up nothing. She says Graves is clean, but Bond and M disagree, and M is going to send Bond to wreck shop and send Frost to clean up after him. But Frost is very obviously a mole.
Very obviously. 3 months, no progress, volunteered for the mission.
And he's been out of prison for like a week and found conflict diamonds?
Right?
Bullshit, lady. Okay,
Bullshit,
I
lady.
see what's going on with you.
You alright?
So you're basically Matt Damoning departing this. Okay. We cut to Iceland and are subject to early noughties time-lapses of camera sweeps before seeing the Vanquish make its way to the Ice Palace. The music is hitting harder than a punch from Craig's Bond, but the scene is shot like a car commercial.
It is a car commercial. What are you talking about? It is totally advertising that Vanquish.
Unapologetically so.
Unapologetically.
Bond drives to a CG ice palace based off of the Eden Project, a complex of 3 geodesic domes in Cornwall. It's an ambitious biosphere project designed to promote the relationship between plants, people, and resources. The real Eden Project is briefly glimpsed later on as Jinx rappels down.
I thought that building looked somewhat familiar. I couldn't remember from what, though.
It just kind of looked like Biodome.
The ice hotel in Reykjavik, though, is truly dope.
The exterior shots and car chase were filmed on the frozen lake Jökulsárlón near Hofen, an area also used in Lara Croft Tomb Raider. This place is not real, and the interiors are sets, but it did cause a spike in bookings for Canadian ice hotels and inspired a few more to pop up annually.
Indeed it did.
When Bond pulls up, he's greeted by Lawrence Makowari, playing Mr. Kill. Now there's a name to die for.
Yeah, you'd think with a name like Mr. Kill, he'd be more hinchy.
He's just fodder, okay? We needed a body.
They needed a jabroni.
Looking up, Bond sees a rocket-powered ice dragster flying across the lake. Graves boldly pilots it right toward the ice palace, trusting its drogue chutes to slow him before colliding with the Vanquish.
I would have cussed him out. You're like, you know how much my fucking car cost?
Graves asks Bond how he liked the run, and Bond says Graves looked like a man on the edge of losing control. And Graves retorts, that's the only place we know who we really are. Under the skin. The pieces are there, but Stevens again makes it so natural and part of his character that you'd be forgiven for not noticing the first time. Graves excuses himself, and Frost approaches Bond. She takes him to his room, saying everything here is made of ice. Hopefully not the beds. And she tells him the human body heat is offset by the amount of ice, and vice versa. But, being built on a lake, Bond hopes that Graves got his calculations correct. In his room, holy shit, the bed is made of ice. That sucks. The chairs, too? Can I have my continental breakfast without a side of frostbite on my ass, please?
Oh. I've always thought, like, going to an ice hotel would be cool and everything, but then I was like, I don't want to sleep on furs on ice.
No.
It doesn't seem comfortable.
No.
That's a lot of the aesthetic of a lot of those hotels. It's like the beds are made of ice, the chairs of the benches, everything's just fucking ice, and it seems cold.
We cut to later on with the party in full swing. Techno music and hyperspeed editing. Yup, it's 2002. Bond orders a martini and spots Jinx before sharing some quips with her. Cutting outside, we see a figure arrive at Graves' private building beside the palace. And then inside, we see him approach Graves underneath the crazy light mask from the Cuban beauty farm. The man removes the mask and Graves stands before him. It's Zhao, and they speak in Korean to each other. Graves reveals whatever he went through gave him permanent insomnia, so he uses the dream machine for an hour a day to keep sane. But without REM sleep, which takes hours to fall into, you'll die. That's just some facts of life for you, buddy.
That's just some real facts. You will go crazy, and then you will die.
Zhao says Bond fucked up his transition, and Graves gloats that Bond knows nothing. Graves was 3 inches from Bond's face, and Bond had no clue who he was. Graves asks about his father, and Zhao says General Moon still mourns his son's death. And wait a minute. Gustav Graves is Colonel Moon? Whoa.
Dum bum bum. Apparently they broke both of his legs and put in some plates to make him a couple inches taller.
That's the most believable part about that. That's a real procedure.
That's a real procedure, yes. Yes, that's the only real procedure there. They did some subtle vocal cord work too because his voice is totally different.
I don't know how they did that.
And his accent comes and goes.
Which is believable for me.
Right, that's the believable part. All the other cosmetic surgery.
But they were smart enough to actually get people with similar bone structure. I don't know if you noticed that. Very similar T-shaped cheekbones.
It's similar.
They call everyone outside for the demo, and Graves takes the podium. He says he wants to give back, and that diamonds are more than shinies. They make dreams become real. They then show a satellite unfurling in space on monitors for the crowd. He says imagine bringing light and warmth, more crops, and basically a second sun, shining like a diamond in the sky. Then hits us with the let there be light line, which, while fitting, is a very blunt and on-the-nose expression of his God complex.
If you hadn't noticed, kind of got a God complex.
Half of these villains do. It's kind of easy.
Of course, when you make a multi-million-dollar skybeam, you could have a little bit of a god complex.
The sun hits the reflector, and a blinding light fills the demo area. Jesus, that's bright.
Super bright. What the fuck?
And as Will discovered, this is the low setting. This is not practical for what he's selling it as. But he calls it Icarus, and they applaud. Yay, we can finally shut Alaska's whinging ass up in the winter.
I would not have it any other way up there.
Graves says it gently bathes light down, but then immediately says you have no idea how much Icarus is about to change your world in the most sinister way possible, as if he couldn't control himself.
It was very evil genius, right? I'm gonna write my name on this planet with my space laser, bitches.
It's like that cartoon where the bad guy gives him something and then like goes and laughs, and the guy's like, I'm right in front of you still.
Right?
Graves stares at Bond while saying this, as if a personal challenge, and yet this is all very in line with his character.
Yes, because it is a personal challenge. Gustav Graves is highly competitive.
They're not just doing random things with this guy. This guy very much fits a behavioral pattern, and I love it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. He's a fine villain.
Even the twist is built off of his personality traits of being hyper-competitive and anger issues.
Right?
General Moon is among the people brought to see this demo, by the way. When it's over, people go back to the party, but Bond spots Mr. Kill and Graves' personal tinkerer, Vlad, played by Mikhail Gorovy, taking the Icarus controls next door. So Bond camos his car and follows them. I mean, it still has an engine, right? Shit, the Foley guys still put in snow crunching sounds, but no one notices even when he's right behind them?
Oh my god. I don't know if you've ever been near a V12. They're really not quiet cars.
Bro!
It's really not. It's not.
Imagine if someone could take a gunshot and make it sound like a roar.
Yeah, right? Right?
Bond looks around the building, which is mostly some type of biodome, but with no Pauly Shore. Inside, Vlad shows Graves his Wish.com Iron Man suit, complete with 100,000-volt force lightning. Outside, Bond is made by a guard, and Mr. Kill sees Bond take him out.
Well, yeah, he does it right in front of the window where he's watching Mr. Kill. This is one of the few times where I'm like, well, finally, a bad guy looked out the fucking window.
My whole thing is, James Bond would have failed a simple Bond video game mission.
Right?
Killing a dude that close to a window.
He didn't even try to con it off and walk away like, oh, haha, I'm in the wrong spot. Let's walk over here where I can kill you quietly. Haha.
An alarm sounds, and Bond hides behind a box like 8 feet away. They'll never find him.
Oh, no. No. That's the last place they ever look.
Bond opens a pressure valve and takes out goons. He walks back to the party, and just when the goons go to chase him, Frost pulls him in between the cars to do the old, oh, we were just here making out routine, which goes on for way too long. For Frost and the audience.
For everybody involved except for Pierce Brosnan.
Except for Pierce Brosnan.
I mean, like the cameraman, the director, everybody was like, we said cut.
Why did she do this? It makes no sense, because, spoiler, she's a triple agent and is definitely a henchwoman. She should have just let them get Bond. It serves her no purpose but to taste him.
At all.
What, just so they could capture him and kill him later? Do it now.
Right? So she doesn't blow her cover at MI6, just kill him.
Which you're gonna do in 2 hours anyways?
Okay, you don't want to kill him right here, and you want to play it off. But you're gonna definitely take him to bed. Kill him then.
Cut to Jinx rappelling into the biodome. With that inserted, cut back to Bond and Frost in Bond's hotel room. Bond insists they keep up the lover's charade, just in case, and she disrobes in front of him. In the Ice Palace. Burr. They bang. Cut back to Jinx, making her way to the heart of the dome where she finds Zhao in the dream machine. She thought it was Graves, and the surprise of seeing Zhao causes her to hesitate when Graves comes up behind her and goes full Palpatine.
Unlimited power!
Back with Bond as he's redressing, Frost gives him his gun that he stored under his pillow, and he belts it without checking it. World's greatest super spy, assuming way too much once again. No way she's gonna betray him again, not after the magic dickin'.
And we are talking about the guy who took him 17 movies to check a corner?
How do you not feel the weight? There's no ammo in that.
Right?
You sleep with a gun under your pillow and you can't tell the weight difference.
Right. Your loaded or empty gun. You can't tell the weight difference.
Bro.
I know.
Back with Jinx, who's in the protracted death machine, bound next to a laser, a la Goldfinger, with Mr. Kill and Neo Zhao. The Matrix was hot around this time. A lot of trench coats and visual effects aping that style. Some looked good, some looked like this. Odd, fractured, 3 frames a second pans that really wanted to be bullet time.
Yeah, it did want to be bullet time. It was blurry, disjointed, and as I said earlier, just in the weirdest spots. And what the fuck is that table that they have her strapped to? What is that for?
Zhao shocks Jinx a couple of times, asking why she wants to kill him, and she just talks shit. Zhao also grabs her boob when he does this.
Every time.
Cutting outside for an insert, we see Bond cutting into the ice with his laser watch. Back with Jinx, Zhao leaves Mr. Kill to live up to his namesake. Mr. Kill is childishly giddy about using the laser, and Zhao says, "Don't leave a mess." Bro, you know what he's about to do. Come on. Mr. Kill turns on the laser, and instead of starting it on her forehead, he starts it inches away to slowly crawl over, of course. Outside, Bond breaks through the ice and dives in. Hey, look, the Thunderball rebreather.
Yes.
Bond just trusted the biopond was a heated section of the lake, and not an insulated fountain. But it works out, and he gets in. He finds Jinx and goes in to save her. When he grabs the controls, Mr. Kill grabs him. And in the scuffle, the machine gets fully activated. It's like 4 lasers with swivel points on a base that moves as well. So they just go everywhere randomly, while not killing Jinx, and the men have a fight.
Right, I was like, how are these lasers going everywhere except the gigantic void of where they are? Like, not one of them gets hit with a laser, not one time?
It's the most unbelievable thing we've seen in a Bond film.
Yeah.
The fight is mostly a brawl with holds and punches. The fight is good. The sequence is ridiculous, beyond unbelievable and annoying, as Jinx will not shut up. Wasn't Bond soaking wet 60 seconds ago?
The fighting, it dried him off. Like a dog shaking.
He learned that at Cambridge.
He learned that at Cambridge.
Bond turns off the lasers, but Mr. Kill pins him down. Jinx is able to grab the controls conveniently, just in time to press 2 buttons and perfectly line up the laser behind Mr. Kill's head and turn it on while missing Bond. Like she watched a training video or something.
Again, everybody seems to have 10,000 hours of expertise in everything they do.
And everything. She killed Kill and reveals she's NSA. She also tells Bond Zhao is here with the dream machine that she thinks he brought from Cuba. But Bond realizes he couldn't have brought it, that it was already here for Graves. Or rather, Moon.
Yes, he has finally figured it out. Why else would Zhao be working with this crazy white boy?
We cut to Graves entering his office to find Bond drawn on him. Bond says Moon lived to die another day. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Roll credits.
Roll credits.
Bond knows he's Colonel Moon, and Graves laughs at how long it took the super spy to guess. Graves also throws away a line about granting Bond life day by day, just to have fun watching if he'll get wise.
So that was it? That was the whole reason he kept him alive? To see if he figured it out?
It's a very throwaway line. Nice little hand wave.
Well, that's pretty stupid.
Yep.
Given Bond's track record and success rate, it's pretty fucking stupid.
I told you, the minute he brought him to Iceland was the minute he lost.
Yeah.
Moon tries to insult Bond by saying he modeled Graves after him, and lists off vices and eccentricities that are almost complimentary, and Bond would have definitely taken him that way. Frost enters and joins Bond aiming at Graves, but Graves says, "Surprise, bitch! She's the one who gave you up in North Korea, motherfucker." And Frost turns on Bond, literally. Bond tries to shoot her, but she took his ammo because he never felt or checked that.
Not once.
Super spy.
Not one fucking time did he check his gun.
Graves says Frost is as competitive as he is, and when he arranged for her competitor at the Sydney Games to overdose on steroids to give Frost the default win, he won himself an MI6 agent.
What a stupid motivation to turn on your country. A gold medal? That's it?
Hey, maybe it's all she wanted.
Okay.
Cut to Jinx, having been sent by Bond to fetch Frost, arriving in Frost's room. When Jinx enters, The doors shut and are rigged to remain shut, trapping Jinx in the icebox. They literally fridged her.
They literally fridge her. She's only there as motivation for him.
She shows up for one sequence, shows up for the party, and then they get rid of her again for her fight for later because they have nothing to do with this girl.
In fact, she's in more death traps than he is in this movie.
With that established, we cut back to Bond when Frost demands his Q-toys. Sal gut checks Bond, and with Bond on his knees, Frost comes up to execute him when Bond activates his sonic ring and shatters the floor, dropping Bond and Frost. Bond breaks for it, and they chase him, firing. He latches onto Jinx's abandoned carabiner, just trusting there's some kind of auto-return winch. But there is, and he zips up and away.
Lucky for him, she just left that there for anybody to find.
Now outside the dome, he uses the same rappel system to run down the dome before boosting the ice dragster and taking off. There's an insert of Frost and Graves for less than a second. It's very Charlie's Angels-esque. The editing is the visual equivalent to ADHD.
It is. It's bad. I didn't like the jump cuts, pans with the slow-mos in between. It was... ugh.
Graves calls his father and his father's men up to the shattered office and dons his power glove. Now he's playing with power. He puts Icarus in kill mode and turns it on, chasing after Bond's rocket car with a beam of light like a sadistic child with a magnifying glass and a particularly fast ant.
Sky beams.
Bond knocks off his stabilizing pontoon wings, and even though he has an unstable center of gravity and is basically balancing on inline ice skates, he just keeps right on. Vlad thinks it worth mentioning to his hyper-competitive murder boss that Bond beat his speed record at this moment. He doesn't strike me as a man who's going to make it to old age.
Right? That was probably one of the stupidest things to say in one of the stupidest moments. Oh, hey, boss, I know you're trying to kill this guy, but he just broke your speed record.
Bond's heading to a cliff, but luckily this ice dragster has a convenient grappling hook system that catches Bond just over the edge. This is some of the worst CG ever, and let me explain. In the early to late 90s, we discovered CGI and started using it in films. At first, just to supplement the still relied on practical effects. We built sets and monsters, and did the actions seen on film. Used sparingly, it wasn't so noticeable, distracting, or often reaching beyond limitations. Then the 2000s happened, and we said, fuck it, let's just make everything in CG, even if our graphical ability at this point is barely above a PlayStation 2. God, the low frame rate slow-mo sucks in this movie.
It does.
Bond aping Bourne's style, another spy movie, is terrible and unforgivable, but this movie jumping on every single fad from 1999 to 2002 is the reason this movie sinks. For every great actor and sequence, it's ruined by jarring editing, unrealistic or annoying characters, and stupid dialogue. This movie never lets you forget that you're in 2002. It has characters that do not belong, and is the most dated of Bond films. Even more so than the bell-bottoms and winged lapels of the 70s, because at least those films had classic elements to them. Timelessness is a big part of a lot of these Bond films, no matter when they were made. This movie is completely about the new millennium.
Completely. This is not rewatchable in modern times.
I feel like it's the least rewatchable out of its era.
Well, yeah, because it is firmly stuck in its era.
Bond climbs out of the car and rips away a panel to make a perfect wakeboard. He grabs the drogue chutes, but Graves has cut away a huge chunk of the ice cliff. And where the fuck in Iceland is this?
Right? I know there's glaciers there, but I don't remember there being any that big.
Giant ice cliffs like this.
Looks a lot like Antarctica.
Graves says global warming is a terrible thing, and the Korean officers just bow. Meanwhile, Bond is parasurfing the mega tsunami caused by the ice slide. If it's not a close-up, Bond looks like a little rubber band who wasn't even properly composited, so he also looks pasted on.
Very Escape from LA, this scene. I mean, this was directed by a guy who did Triple X, so why am I even surprised?
Bond rides the wave to a mega ice ramp and jumps all the way back up to the ice shelf. Hope that's a thick sweater.
Right?
We cut to Jinx so Frost can be a bitch to her and build the feud up for their match at the climax.
At the pay-per-view, I like it.
Outside, even though he rocketed miles away, a convenient goon rides by on a snowmobile. Man, this movie is convenient.
It is.
Bond jacks it and races back, watching a plane come in as he does. You know what else is convenient? When Bond escaped the night before with a valve turn, he blew a hole in the fence, allowing him now to call his car to him with the key fob,
Right.
which he enters no problem while still invisible.
Doesn't fumble for the handle or anything like that.
Close your eyes and walk through your own house.
Have you ever been on a snow machine? I just wanted to point it out. At those speeds, at that distance, he would have frostbite on all of his exposed skin, if not hypothermia.
Just then, a goon collides his snowmobile with the invisible object, ejecting him and alerting Zhao. Zhao hops into his 2002 Jaguar XKR and hits the thermal imaging and miniguns. The guns disable Bond's camo and the chase is on. The ice chase is plagued by the cinematography ruining editing and feels like a car commercial from 20 years ago. Again, I keep expecting some kid to look at the camera and say, zoom, zoom.
Zoom, zoom. I keep expecting to see the Aston Martin logo pop up with the dub over. Aston Martin.
They ordered special spike tires that gripped so well that they actually had to improvise a half solution to give the car some slide. We cut to an insert of Jinx failing to hotwire her door lock. She is all kinds of useless in this film. She couldn't burn her photo, she couldn't kill Zhao, let him get away from Bond, got captured, almost got killed while almost taking Bond with her, and now she's captured again and just waiting out the third act till the climax for her big plane match with Frost.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Bond's car camo is slowly fixing itself, but until then, they drive, spin, shoot, fire rockets, and just show off the drive team's beautiful skills. There's a really cool bit where Zhao fires a missile underneath Bond's Aston and it flips on the roof, just for Bond to hit the passenger ejector and it flips him back over while another missile sails underneath.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Not very believable, but cool.
Cutting to Graves, we see him, Vlad, and Frost boarding the Antonov AN-124-100. Also aboard are the Korean generals, an MD-900 Explorer, and the Icarus controls, which Vlad also built into the Lawnmower Man suit. Vlad looks like Lawnmower Man, and Brosnan was in that movie. Also Mrs. Doubtfire. That's just random, but I'm throwing it out there.
That's just random. And we're not going to talk about Dante's Peak.
Graves turns Icarus on the ice palace to give the American her bath, and as the place melts, her room starts to fill with water. But wouldn't it also melt the walls?
Yeah, it would. In fact, I don't even know why there was water on the inside of the ice hotel, because that's not how ice works.
Bond drives back to the palace and bowls some goons over on his way in. This set piece is amazing, and I love this sequence even though it's stupid and the structural integrity of this place never seems to weaken. He drives through the ice palace as it's melting and flooding, and Zhao's still chasing him. They drive around the hotel with Zhao firing at Bond. And Jesus, bro, what's wrong with your veins?
He was a little amped up on the drive scene, I guess. I just wondered how does all of his sensitive electronics work with that much water in his fucking car? Because it's a convertible.
It's good up to 3 meters.
It's a spy car. It's water resistant.
As Bond winds his way up like a parking garage, it dawns on you that there's no stairs. Just giant spiral ice slides. Good luck, penthouse renters.
Right? Have fun getting all the way to your room. No elevator, no stairs, just this giant ice ramp. You gotta be accomplished climbers to get to the top floor.
Jinx is about to drown up there, as enough ice has melted to fill the room, but apparently not enough to collapse the roof.
Again, yeah, not really how ice works, but okay.
Bond stops his car. The same second, his camo is restored. Zhao is coming in with ramming spikes full send. Bond hits the camo and magic tire spikes to reverse onto a pile of huge ice blocks. Zhao drives over the ledge and into the lobby fountain, when Bond drives past and shoots out a giant diamond chandelier, which drops onto Zhao, because Bond loves trying to kill this guy in the most bougie way possible.
With the most diamonds ever.
He just keeps throwing diamonds at this guy's face.
Also, didn't this ice hotel remind you of the ice skate scene in Batman Forever? I kind of got Batman Forever vibes when they were driving through.
That's Batman and Robin.
Oh yeah, you're right. That is Batman and Robin.
Bond batters down the door to Jinx with his car, and Ring shatters the windscreen to pull her in. She's not breathing, and he drives through a wall to get out into the hot spring near the biodome. He gives her rescue breathing, and she comes back, but Bond watches Graves escape on his plane. We then cut to a US command bunker in the demilitarized zone in South Korea. They keep saying it's in the zone, and I'm sure they mean right on the appropriate borders of it because demilitarization means no military.
Right, that's what it means. That's why it's laced with thousands of mines, up to a point where there's no military, and then laced with thousands of mines the other side.
It's here that Bond and Jinx meet with Robinson, who tells them that there was a military coup in North Korea while General Moon was in Iceland, and there's 80,000 troops amassing at the border for something big. They approach M, who's bickering with Falco over blame, but they both fucked up.
Yeah, no, they definitely both fucked up.
Madsen is awesome. I wish we got more Falco. I love the way he talks to M and Bond.
No, I definitely like Michael Madsen, especially in this role. When this first kicked in, I was like, oh yeah, Michael Madsen's in this. Is he the bad guy?
He points out the troops are lining up to walk across the world's largest minefield, and Bond points out Graves will use Icarus to clear the mines and opposition. Falco assures Bond they're taking care of that with an ASAT launch in an hour. Meanwhile, Graves has landed on an airbase in the middle of North Korea. So cut to the heroic duo in the back of a plane. Set. It's a set, and they never show an exterior shot, so it's any plane you want it to be.
That's true. It is. It's every plane you want it to be, actually.
But on that plane, the duo lay in mini plane-like gliding devices that are launched out. These are switchblades, and are very real. The movie Switchblade is based on a workable model called FAST, PHASST, Programmable High Altitude Single Soldier Transport. And they literally work exactly as shown for once.
Again, James Bond franchise always on the cutting edge of military technology, most of the time.
Cutting to Graves, we hear Vlad inform him of the anti-sat strike against Icarus, and Graves orders him to leave the satellite on automatic. As the missile flies into space, the satellite burns it up harmlessly before it ever even gets close. Hard cut to later as Bond is set to snipe Graves with Jinx as his spotter. The only problem was he never got a clean shot before Graves reboards the plane. So Bond and Jinx have to get on the plane, so they jump in the wheel well and enjoy suffocating.
Right, or getting crushed in the wheels. I mean, they write stories about that all the time.
Nah, they alright. They found a hatch into cargo. Nice Ferrari and Lambo Diablo. Cut to Graves in his self-made RoboCop cosplay when General Moon walks over and Graves calls him father in Korean. After a bit of convincing, Graves monologues and the heroes worm their way through the plane. Graves activates Icarus and we cut to Falco saying the second it hits the 38th parallel, they're gonna launch everything they've got. Back with Graves when Daddy Moon says the Americans will send nukes, but Graves says Icarus will swat them from the sky. So the Lunar Papa grabs a gun and holds it on his honkified son. Meanwhile, after taking out some goons, Bond keeps looking for Graves, while Jinx takes over the cockpit and pilots the plane toward the Icarus beam. Bond finds Graves just in time to see Graves fry his dad. Graves shoots his father also, causing the most exaggerated death ever in a Bond film with a sad chorus. And a low frame rate slow-mo, but this time they threw in echo effects also, because anything worth ruining is worth over-ruining.
This guy seemed like he wanted to copy everybody.
Right?
All at once.
Every fad.
Yeah.
Bond goes to shoot Graves, but a goon kicks his gun away, shooting out a window and causing rapid depressurization. Vlad is instantly blown out. All the other goons are too. Looks like your friends have bailed, Bond quips as he struggles with Robo-Graves. Jinx tries to level the plane, as if losing pressure causes the plane to lose height, and not that they do that to get to breathable air again.
Right.
After she fights to level out, Frost puts a sword against her throat from behind and takes her gun. Frost has Jinx engage autopilot, which Jinx does, just right toward the beam.
Jinx has got that same kind of super spy training that James Bond does because the moment she took that cockpit, why didn't she lock the door?
They give Bond and the beam the inserts for a minute here and focus instead on the cat fight. Then the plane hits the beam, and everything goes to shit as the plane is slowly ripped apart.
But what kind of plane was this anyway, by the way, where the whole fucking bottom nose of the fuselage is fucking glass?
He stole it from Howard Hughes.
Okay. Yeah.
Frost slashes at Jinx, who throws knives at Frost, with one landing in the Art of War. Jinx does a backflip that Halle Berry definitely didn't do. She's no Michelle Yeoh.
No, she is no Michelle Yeoh.
Jinx then takes time in this life and death blade fight to take off her jacket before rearming herself. And Jinx's swordplay being on par with an Olympian is even less believable than Bond beating that Olympian's student.
Right?
Back with Bond's fight, and it's pretty much a squash match. Graves is barely putting up a fight at first. It's all fun and games till the taser comes out, then it's electrifying. With the girls, Frost gloats that she can read Jinx's every move, so Jinx just stabs her with the throwing knife stuck in the art of war, saying, "Read this," before kicking it into the bitch's heart.
There you go. The perfect full circle foreboding.
Back with Bond, who's writhing on the floor when Graves pulls out 2 chutes, smiling. "Oh look, parachutes for the both of us." And then he tosses one out of the fuselage saying, "Whoops." I fucking love that bit more than words can describe because it's 100% something I would do.
Yep, that was pretty much the most dick move of the whole movie.
It was great.
Whoops.
Graves then crouches down over Bond to gloat some more, and Bond pulls the chute line, sending Graves' chute out of the plane along with Graves. But he grabs some framework and is holding on. When Bond pushes a button on the suit, Graves electrocutes himself. Why did Vlad add the self-shock button? Vlad was such an idiot.
What was the self-shock button? How did he electrocute himself? Just because he was holding the airframe?
It was right on his sternal area, like just this button right underneath his neck, like electrocute yourself. The satellite attack was first written to take place in Manhattan, but after the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks, it was moved to the Korean demilitarized zone.
World events do shape movies.
Graves is sucked into the plane engine, and Icarus is taken offline. Now they just have to survive the rapidly crumbling plane falling from the sky. So they run to cargo and open the tail. They activate the load conveyor belt and jump in the helicopter as it slowly inches toward the back. Shit's blowing up. There's flames licking the choppa, but those supercars gotta be dumped first so they can tombstone in rice paddies and make awesome art.
Awesome art.
It's a Bond movie, so you know they got the choppa out the very second before the plane completely lost structural integrity. I mean, we get it. It's exciting. But at this point, a statistical impossibility.
Right?
This chopper has been blown up, banged up, hit with debris, and is falling as Bond tries to start it. But hey, it's bloody filled with diamonds, so there's that.
I'm not a professional helicopter pilot, but I know how aerodynamics work. A helicopter falling out of a plane, I would feel, would be unrecoverable.
Good luck. I'm not saying unrecoverable, but I am saying good luck. I think that helicopter is unrecoverable because of the amount of damage it went through getting out. The chopper starts up with inches to spare, because of course it did, and we cut to Vauxhall Cross at night. Moneypenny is closing the files when James comes in and says her name, so soft and loving. They actually start kissing, and then clearing the desk. After forever, it's finally happening. And then we cut to Q walking in on Moneypenny using the VR Oakleys. A psych-out gag.
A masturbatory psych-out gag.
These psych-out gags are so cheap and lame, and dime a dozen in this fucking franchise up to this point.
Up to this point, yeah.
Cut to a little Korean hut by the sea. Special made over 8 days in Wales for this one shot. Cutting to a set for the interior, the heroes get it on in the diamonds, and she laments having to give them back. And wait a second. This movie is Diamonds Are Forever all over again.
100%. He made a satellite made of diamonds to focus light onto the planet. This is the exact same movie.
I'm giving this movie a D+. This is a fucking mess. A dumpster fire. Don't get me wrong. They had some nice shit that they used as kindling, but it all still burned to shit by the end. The cinematography was ruined by the editing, the acting by the writing. In fact, everything was ruined by the editing. This movie suffers most for being released in the era it was and chasing fads harder than any Bond movie ever has or ever will. You are relieved, Moonraker. But here's the thing. With all that said, it's still kind of fun, and I enjoyed it more than the last movie.
Too much crazy bullshit going on in this movie from beginning to end. It's just ridiculous and unbelievable for the whole movie. And I was thinking to myself, am I watching a Fast and Furious movie or am I watching James Bond? Because it felt like Fast and Furious or Triple X or any of those other 2000s-ish action flicks. that were all style and no substance. And that's not what I want from a James Bond movie. I need a little substance. I need a little substance. Something. Yeah, and by the way, I gave it a D-.
For the kill count, how many do you think Bond kills in this movie?
Well, fuck, he kills at least 10 people in the beginning of this movie. At least. So I'm going to say, 18?
31. 20 die by other means for a total of 51. For the pre-title. The pre-title is a little bloated for just a chase and Bond's capture. And still they couldn't get it all in and had to take over the titles. But it's a really good setup for the film. It's very fun and exciting. Tactical giant wave riding, hovercraft, explosions, and Bond captured? Gasp. 5th place.
I gave this 8th place. It was messy. The surfing was cool, but then I started getting Escape from New York vibes with the CG, and then they went into the capture and everything, which was cool, and then they had to do the expository. We had all this extra film we shot, but we can't put it in the movie. 8th place.
The title. The titles are Dan's best so far, and the first to dare continue playing the movie, which I'm on the fence about. But the song is the fucking worst. Absolute worst Bond song ever, and it's not even a Bond song. How is this song built from the OG chords in any way? 21st place.
I give it 15th place because you were right. I liked what I saw, but not what I heard. And as you know, I rank the title sequence with the song. So if I don't like the song, I don't like the title sequence, no matter how visually good it is. 15th place.
Moneypenny pickup line. Did they talk at all in this movie? Just her VR sexcapades, which did make moms giggle. Adios, Mrs. Bond. Nice name, though. And Carter loved you. 17th place.
I actually gave this one 18th place because there was no Moneypenny pickup line. I didn't get to see Samantha Bond finish, so 18th place.
Wow. Q gadgets. The Q scene had props and gadgets from every single Bond movie that came before. A meta remark about the laser watch, a new car more kitted than ever and turns invisible, but most importantly, it still comes when you call it, because sometimes it starts raining while you're grocery shopping, and that sucks. Cleese put in a much better performance as the quartermaster here, and there's even some growth between him and Bond. For as bad as he was last time, he nailed it here. But the car gadgets are unforgivably fantasy. 17th place.
As much as I like John Cleese's work as Q in this particular movie, which was good, it was a 100% turnaround from his introduction. I appreciated that. He spent pretty much the first half, maybe even 60-70% of the movie without any Q gadgets. He had binoculars and pistol. So overall, I gave it 17th place. The gadgets that he did have were the same old laser watch, tricky car, which I didn't get to see enough of. Who makes an invisible car?
Speaking of cars, the 2002 Aston Martin Vanquish, or in this case, Vanish. I mentioned its gadgets above. It's an Aston, but probably my least favorite of them so far, and like John Cena, you can't see it most of the movie. It's also the most ridiculous gadget ever, 7th place.
Wow. Well, I agree with all of your points, except I ranked it lower because I didn't get a chance to see it. 13th place for me.
Main ally, Giacinta Jinx Johnson, an NSA agent assigned to kill the rogue North Korean agent Zhao. She has an affinity for knives, smack talk, and diamonds. She also doesn't do anything but wait around to kill Frost. She does tell the plane to fly itself into the Icarus beam, so there's that, I guess. Yay. I don't buy the chemistry here, and Barry feels like she's wandered on to the wrong set. 15th place.
Where I do agree with you that Jinx felt a lot of out of place. I gave her 9th place, though, because she still seemed a lot more, regardless of how little she did, she still did a lot more than a lot of the other allies he's had in the past.
What?
She didn't sit around and eat chicken.
She literally barely did anything more than that. She killed Frost. That is it.
Whatever.
Villains. Gustav Graves, born Tan Sun Moon, and was a colonel in the North Korean People's Army. Studied at Oxford and Harvard. A violent, raging psychopath with an insane competitive nature. He is almost killed by Bond and goes through bullshit gene therapy to become Graves, given the backstory of an orphan working mines in Argentina that somehow finds diamonds in Iceland, just to build a super weapon to win a 50-year-old war to impress his daddy. You know what? Fuck his daddy. He's doing it for him. It took 2 actors to bring this villain to life, and neither could have done better with what they were given. And very complex, but cartoonish, and entertaining character, 10th place.
I liked him. He was a decent villain. Maniacal, just the right amount of maniacalness. Just the right amount of, evil geniusness. He was alright. I give him a 9th place. As the Korean, I really loved Moon. As Gustav Graves, it was believable because he filled that part so well, like the actor who played Graves kind of studied the actor who played Moon. So you could edit a little bit of those personality quirks that you got in the very beginning of the movie. That you had to look for, but they were there.
But was smart enough to make it still come off like he was just a good old boy, too.
Right, yeah.
Main hench, Tang Lin Zhao, or Diamond Zitz. North Korean intelligence operative turned terrorist, and the right-hand man of Graves. He's bald, pale, and ripping off Nosferatu, The Matrix, and somehow Twilight with his sparkling acne. Until the diamonds return to finish the job, like a horror movie villain for one. He doesn't do much, but does overpower Bond and outquip him. He's memorable as fuck, but this far along, that'll only get you 10th place.
I gave Zhao 9th place. As you said, he doesn't do terribly much.
If he was Halle Berry, he'd forgive him for that.
He was memorable as a henchman. I would even say he might have been a better villain.
I don't know if I could ever agree with that.
No?
Bond girl, Miranda Frost, Olympian fencer that has a purchased victory. MI6 operative turned mole for Graves, who is very ineffective at controlling him, being faithful to him, helping him, or even just staying alive. She also betrayed Bond and landed him over a year of torture. But worse than all of that, she's an insufferable, frigid bitch. Acted maybe too well in that regard for something still so wooden. 22nd place. I really wanted Jinx to be the Bond girl, but then who the fuck is the ally in this movie? Maybe if Raoul came back in the end. Oh well.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping Raoul would come back in the end, and I know we made Miranda the Bond girl in this. I also gave her 22nd place. The worst Bond girl ever.
One-liner. I've missed your sparkling personality. Bond quips to Zhao before Zhao punches the Brosnan out of Bond, saying, how's that for a punchline? 7th place. The writing was so stupid that it became delightfully tacky to me, and I just have fun laughing sometimes.
I've been known to keep my tip up is the one I chose. Because, of course, it was. It's quintessential Bond one-liner. Penis joke. 19th place. Because none of the one-liners in this movie were good.
Locations. North and South Korea, Cuba, Iceland. Korea was shot in England, Cuba in Spain, and they actually went to Iceland and dammed up a lagoon to freeze it. Then spent as much time in a CG version. 18th place.
I like the way they shot the locations. They made Cuba feel very much like Cuba.
They made Spain feel very much like Cuba.
Well, they made Spain feel very much like Cuba, yes.
I hated the locations because they were all fake.
Yeah, well, yes, they were all fake. I gave the locations in this an 8th place because I really dug the set design on everything. It was really good this time.
Protracted attempt to kill Bond. They never really protract an attempt to kill Bond in this movie, instead giving that honor to Jinx and having Bond save her like a shit-talking damsel in distress who needs Adderall or has had too much already. The scene itself is maddening, science fucking chaos, and an obvious homage to Goldfinger, 20th place.
I gave it 19th place because Bond was never in a death trap. Yes, they gave that honor to Jinx, and they put her in every death trap they could figure they had for this movie. They basically really did fridge the girl. She was only there to motivate the hero. That was her whole reason.
And that's why I ranked her a lot lower than you. Mission. The mission was to kill Moon and Zhao. Along the way, he needed to stop the laundering of conflict diamonds, and then prevent another Diamonds Are Forever, and a reboot of MASH. This was beyond convoluted and ridiculous, with ever-increasing leaps of logic, chipping away at my suspension of disbelief. He's a warlord. Oh, he's a white guy diamond smuggler. Oh, now he's got a super weapon. Oh, now he's Iron Man. 22nd place.
I give it 19th place. The plot was all over the place. The bad guy was 5 villains. His plot was indeed convoluted. Like, okay, so you built this giant space laser that America eventually is going to blow out of the sky because you only built one of them. What next? and he didn't have a what's next, so 19th place.
Stunts. They do have surfers riding some of the highest waves in the world for the pre-title. And it's worth noting that Brosnan does a fair bit of his own stunts still. The chases feel like car commercials, but the sword fight is dope. And of course, someone skydives. That's all I have to say about that. 13th place.
The surfing was dope. Pretty good fencing. Oh, all around, it's not bad for martial combat. I gave it a 10th place overall. Most of the stunt work was professional and acceptable for the movie of its time, with a couple of standout moments. 10th place.
Score.
Not counting the Madonna song, 11th place. The score was alright. It's a little techno-y, made for the time, but it did have a lot of the classic refrains in the appropriate moments. I gave it 11th place.
The score was trash. Arnold nailed it last time with the blending of electronic and more classical elements, but this time, some scenes felt like a rave. It's far too much at almost all times. It's 100% a 2002 score. You can't blame him, because for the time, this is what teen audiences expected in movies. I know, I was there. And sadly, no matter how much it hurts us old men, teens drive media. Where was I? Oh yeah, 20th place, and he was doing so well. Movie.
Whoa, what can be said about this movie that has not been said about Afghanistan? Bombed out, depleted. This movie, I guess it was fun, somewhat coherent, but the way it was shot with the slow-mo wannabe John Woo filming and everything, it became a slog towards the end, especially because they started ramping up that slow-mo cut shit, smash cuts, smash cut this, smash cut that with a slow-mo wave. It's like I might have gotten motion sick at the end. I gave this movie 15th place. It was bad.
This movie is a beautiful disaster. Practically everything from a non-biased critique standpoint, other than most performances, was a fucking dumpster fire. A complete, near incoherent mess, and often a very dated attack on the senses. But despite everything I just said, it's one hell of a fun movie, and far more enjoyable under the microscope than The World Is Not Enough. 14th place. Bond. It's that time again where we sadly have to rank Mr. Brosnan.
I want to give him a tie for second place. I love Pierce Brosnan. I do. And I've always wanted him to be James Bond. I did. And after watching his movies, they got progressively worse.
Sadly, he had 4 movies and 3 of them sucked.
Yeah, it was a real bell curve straight to the ground. So yeah, third place.
Brosnan was my first Bond, and personally, nostalgically, he'll always be amazing to me. He had a charisma to him. He seemed really cool and sexy to the ladies. He was very believable in action scenes in his first couple of outings, but he was plagued by terrible scripts, and that's just a sad fact, no matter how much we love him. In The World Is Not Enough, he had a separated shoulder, but ziplined twice and never sold the injury unless someone's hand was on it. GoldenEye was epic, so far the best in the series, but each of Brosnan's returns got markedly worse, and the run was paritic by the second half. We said if Dalton had one more movie, he'd probably be the best Bond, and if Brosnan had better movies, he would be. But that's not how it happened. Third place. And, as they said, Bond will return, and so will we. Until then,
I'm Agent Carter.
and I'm Agent Sedgwick.
Stay spying, y'all.